brand new wave, drowning out the noise it's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms, new dawn today. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're unpanned. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Welcome into Chatterbox. Yeah, it's not Squawk Box like I was saying yesterday. That's that MSNBC show about people talk about the markets. Hey, where's Zach? This isn't right. Get in
Here I am. Here I am. Welcome. And we're going to do something different for Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. We're going to talk about some nerd stuff.
right.
Because you know what? There's too much black pilling politics out there. It gets exhausting. The news gets exhausting. Sometimes you just need to break and just give people a feel of some bread and circuses. Because sometimes bread and circuses is a good escape. Because really, I think the bread and circuses anymore, with the rise of social media and all of its platforms and the politicizing of a nation, is politics in general. It's meant to divide us and gravitate us towards destroying ourselves. Because the elite, the dystopians, understand that humanity is very tribalistic in nature. We are enmeshed into our own culture, and we're afraid to embrace other cultures because it's a breakdown. It's a breakdown effect. So let's take a break and let's talk about something that Andrew really, really has wanted to talk about on this podcast for a long time. Video games.
Computer hacking, video games, software exploits, CPU reversing. Hell yeah. Let's start with
So
PlayStation
this-
3.
Yeah, so this is Legacy News episode 35. Not a whole lot of news on today. So
This is legacy news, the news from the past.
it's news from the past. It's news from the past. I am the legacy of Jennifer and Kaiser. I'm Zachary Kaiser. That's Andrew Joseph, if you didn't already know. And let's jump right into it. Andrew, I'm going to let you step up and be the host today.
I'm going to give you a black pill right now about Sony. Did you know that several years ago there was a computer security engineer in Germany who was trying to reverse engineer the cell processor, and he was telling Sony, back off or I'm going to release the entire, library of your cell processor. And they didn't back off. They went and raided his house twice with the police, and he released everything he had on the not on the dark web, on the regular, traditional web. And it was all over, for just a little bit, then it just went silent. What do you think about that, Zach? You're a big Sony fan, right?
I think there's more lawfare. Man, I wanted to take a break from politics. You're bringing me black pills and exhausting me. It's more lawfare, bro. What is the
Okay.
law anymore, man? What happens if, I don't know, what if Donald Trump did the same thing? Well, no, bad example. Poor example. Never mind. What if Joe Biden did the same thing?
Well, okay, let's say flashcards. Okay, everyone knows what flashcards, but in case you don't, it's
You know
a
what?
circumvention.
Keep it away from. Let's keep it away from politics. What if the same thing happened to Bill Gates and his Microsoft gaming studios?
Well, I'm just trying to go into history here, man. I mean, this
Oh,
is
I know. I'm trying to pick
oh
your
man,
brain.
right? Let's say flashcards. Okay, it's a
Yeah.
circumventing device. You play pirated or backed up copies. It really depends on where you get it. If you do it yourself or you get it off of, well, we're not supposed to talk about that. But back during the Atari days, that's when that was a part of the gray market, and someone came out with a device to make a copy of the ROM, read-only memory of the game. When they write the game, is to a write once chip, and that's how they distribute it. It's on the cartridges, right? And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't have these devices that make copies of your games, even if you legally own them. And that's where we've been since. We've been fighting that back and forth. Someone made a legal emulator of the PlayStation called Bleem. Back to the PlayStation. Sorry, Zach. And you could put the game inside of a Mac operating system, the disk drive, and legally play the game on the Mac. It's a high, sorry, I'm trying to remember the name. A high level emulation. It's where you send 0 and it responds to 0. You send 1, it responds with 1, and it equals out the code so that it accurately answers the calls for every executable that's on the program.
Dude,
Sony,
this isn't a black pill.
I
You're
know,
white pilling me. You're white pilling me on the fact that open source is just great.
right?
Yeah, copyright.
Sony,
I mean, everybody
so
should copyright infringement. Yeah, everybody should copyright infringe. Copywriting is
well,
a legal junction to stop competition.
Sony filed a lawsuit against Bleem. They won. No, Sony lost the lawsuit, but because Bleem had spent all their resources that they got from the legal service that according to the lawsuit, they had to go out of business. That's
Yeah.
where
It's lawfare.
that's where, yeah,
It's using the law
pressure.
to insert pressure on a competitive apparatus so that you put them out of business and you don't have to compete. And then you absorb their assets, their technology, their strain on the market, their innovation, and then use it for your own. And that's what Sony does. I mean, Sony's a big giant corporation.
It
Obviously,
is.
they're going to want
And they've
to
been
maintain their dominance on the market. Same with Nintendo, although Nintendo is not as big. It has been able to maintain its success by staying relatively smaller in its niche. But Nintendo, Microsoft, since it's gotten into the gaming, Sega at one point, obviously they kind of just ate themselves. They went and honestly, back to the Sony point, that's actually why Sega ended up failing, is probably because they decided to go into direct competition with Sony, with the Sony PlayStation, when the world was not ready for competition against Sony. Because
When
Sony, with the PlayStation, was the first to ever jump the gun to like CD-ROM based games, to digitalize gaming, whereas everybody else was still
1994 or
utilizing 19,
1996.
1996. Yeah, was when the PlayStation 1 came out, whereas everybody else was still very much astute to the cartridge system. And so
Yeah.
then here comes Sega around 2000, right at the peak of Sony's PlayStation kind of taking its dive, like everybody's kind of subsiding, and here comes Sega with Dreamcast, and then out comes the new system of Sony in 2001 with PlayStation 2. And I
Well, let
think
me
there was some legal there. I think there were
let
some
me
legal shenanigans with Sony and Sega as well because of that. I could be
let me
wrong, but
touch on both of those, the Sony situation and the Sega situation. I'm going to go in two different directions. The first direction is Sony actually worked with Microsoft, not Microsoft, worked with Nintendo to
yeah,
create a sound chip for the Super Nintendo, and that was a success for them, and they wanted to expand that, and so they started to do uh, an add-on system, right? For the and they said, well, no, we're changing our mind. We're going to go with Philips. Well, Sony had already gotten involved, pretty deep in the weeds, and they said, well, okay, if that's the case, we are gonna, just launch our own product. That's where the PlayStation 1 came in. So Nintendo kind of screwed themselves, and they've been kicking themselves ever since. Now let me go back to the Sega. Okay, Dreamcast. That the hardware for the Dreamcast was basically the inspiration for the original Xbox. Um, there was too much on the market at the time. They overextended themselves as Sega, and they realized, we made a calculated risk, and it didn't work out. And so basically they thrived off of the Xbox for the first generation and rebuilt their company's finances and stuff like that. But let me go back to the thing about Sony. He was talking about earlier about legal shenanigans. I remember Lysander Spooner. He talks about copyright, right? And this is what you were jumping into. The way that the copyright system works now, and I want your input about this. It's under the umbrella of the company, right? So if you do violate copyright law, you are, in essence, it's the individual versus the company. In the company,
yeah.
it takes larger and larger amounts to be able to contribute to find the final product that they sell, that they cover under that copyright. Like Sandra
Well,
Spooner
they
made the
yeah,
point.
and they find their loopholes to get around this because
Yeah,
of non-disclosure and non-competes, so that you have the team built of individuals. Your ideas are the corporation, the corporate entity, the person that is the corporation, because you are working within the realm of the corporate entity. So all the ideas may be in individuals, but it's interconnected with the workarounds of
right.
how the corporation develops. So the ideas end up being the corporation, and they control that through a means of non-disclosure, non-compete. Just go through the basic legalese forms that you have to sign your life away when you work for high-level corporate businesses, such as, say, Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft or Sega or whatever, what have you.
Um,
Since we're
I was going
since
to
we're in
say,
video games.
Lysander Spooner was talked about this, and when he talked about copyright, if you're going, and like I said, jump in here, if you're going to claim intellectual property, you would have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, to borrow a term, that it is actually, you know, property. And intellectual, it's an idea. People have ideas all the time. You can't grasp an idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it
The
would
only
take
time, yeah.
a person who had the original idea, they would file a lawsuit against the person that the corporation is going after. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's a testy line because an idea you really cannot entrap an idea and consider it property because, as you said, it's an idea. It comes from the mind. So, I mean, unless you want to go as far as saying, well, the body is the person's, yeah, I mean, the body is the person's property. You own yourself. So, thus, the idea comes from your body because it comes from your brain. You have to think it. You have, you know, while you plan it and this and that. I mean, but that's just not the train of thought that we should be thinking of. So, like, what exactly is an idea? Should an idea be property? If that's the
Let's
case,
jump.
then if that's the case, and I hate to go on to the political bullshit that we're trying to stay away from it, but if that's the case, then the argument for sorry conservatives, the argument for abortion is thrown out the fucking window there, conservatives, because you own your body, my choice, right? Sorry, liberals, you can't inject. I mean, if you want to inject yourself, but the idea, you get what I'm saying? If your body's not your property, then I can stop you from injecting yourself, liberals. I can tell the conservatives, fuck off. You start having mass abortions, right? So how can an idea be property, right? If it's not property.
I'm not going to go off to that topic because this is not what this episode's about.
No. But
But
but how can it? How is
I
an
am going to
idea
pivot.
property?
I am going to pivot and come back to Nintendo. Nintendo, there's an emulator called Dolphin, which emulates the GameCube
Oh,
and the Wii.
I used Dolphin.
Dolphin,
It was
yeah,
awesome.
it is a good good emulator. It was listed on Steam recently, couple months ago, and Nintendo said, "No, screw that. We're gonna have Steam take it down." And the reason that they said they're going to take it down is because there's a string of numbers. It's called a private key. They include it in every copy of the Dolphin emulator. Nintendo claims it's their intellectual property because it's a number that's only used to sign for their software. Now, how can you realistically prove that they own that? It's a string of numbers. It's like maybe 20 digits.
How can you prove
I
it?
don't know.
You can't. You really can't. It's just a string of numbers,
It's
a string of
you
equations,
can't
code.
mix numbers and say that that's property.
No. That's one reason, like, to pivot and take this to a blockchain, and we'll get back to the video game scenario, get back to Nintendo and all that. But I mean, that's one reason why the blockchain can never be owned because it's just a string of numbers. You have a different coordination of individuals through account, through wallets, through addresses that end up meshing and coordinating within the blockchain through transaction, through trade, etc., but nobody owns it. Nobody owns one particular exchange. Nobody owns one particular coin. I mean, you get what I'm saying?
I'm going to
So
push
to
back
go
with you
back,
on that.
yeah,
Okay. Blockchain brings law and order to the internet because it becomes harder and harder for you as a person to produce a forgery.
yeah,
So, in essence, down the road, Nintendo could prove that they own those numbers, but it would
I
be
guess, yeah.
it would be harder for them to be financially successful with the software that they release because it would rely on that code being hardened.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? Is there a trade-off there?
I mean, I think the
You
trade-off
can't.
would be you voluntarily giving up certain rights to work alongside and within, say, Nintendo. So to utilize your ideas and correspond them with other ideas in order to code these numbers effectively to design certain systems ingrained to these new gaming technologies. That would
Nintendo Switch
trade off,
Online.
in my
The,
opinion.
what I,
You're giving your labor and your idea for another's idea, and you're combining.
Nintendo Switch Online allows you to stream emulated video games from Nintendo servers. That was
I heard
their
that.
compromise about that was their compromise to try to stop piracy. Okay, like I said, if you go and harden the software, people can just go rerun the same software on newer systems.
Yeah.
You can't, rip it, uproot it from the software that's already been established and go and re-implement it again. You
You're
can't
effectively
reinforce. You can't reinforce. Copyright contracts because it's already been seeded in the blockchain, and people could just go rerun the numbers over and over again.
you're effectively competing to cooperate. That's basically what you're doing. You're competing to cooperate or cooperating to compete. So you're all basically working in aligned with one another while at the same time still effectively being at odds with each other.
It's called copyleft.
Yeah,
It's
copy
where you
left.
have the original program or software or comic or whatever it is, and
Mhm. Are you a leftist?
you fork it. No, you fork it. You take the software and you re-implement it, but it's not the original because the original has got a license and it's an open source license.
That's the
And
first
that's
time I've ever heard of open source license. Explain that
well
actually. What is an open
an
source license? I
an
thought it was
open
open source. Why do you need a license?
a GPL, general public license. It's a specific type of license that you grant to whoever develops the software. That as
Mhm.
long as you include this a written note stating that this software is open source, you may modify it, adjust it, and use it as you need for whatever purpose necessary in order
So it's a
to
workaround.
further improve the situation
It's a
of
workaround.
the software.
It's finding a loophole within the system that we have today and using it for your own industry or for your own niche. You're effectively utilizing the patent system, the copyright structure that we have today as a means to allow for a transpondence of different competing, uh, I guess, adversaries, you could theoretically say, utilizing that code.
Okay,
You make the code, but
let
and
me
you license it, but then you generalize it for others to be able to correspond with it and use it
let, let
and
me
adapt to it
provide
and blend
a
it.
real world example here. Have you played Doom?
Yeah, yeah. I've
Doom for
loved
the
it.
Super Nintendo is over 20 years old now. They open
Yeah.
sourced the software, the source code for the Super Nintendo port of Doom.
Hmm.
And just recently, there was a new implementation of Doom that was released on a Super Nintendo cartridge that actually improved the original software. And I mean, the Super Nintendo port was like absolutely outstanding, considering the hardware
Yeah.
limitations.
Well, I
So
mean, the
it
idea
it,
of left
it
is a lot better than copyright because you can focus on improvements. Whereas with copyright, you're kind of contained within the element of that monopolization in that industry. So you want a system built more on a copyright on copy left rather than copyright.
yeah.
Because again, like I said, I mean it's effectively cooperating to compete or competing to cooperate, whatever you want to call it. You're all against each other, but at the same time you're for each other because you're for improving something for the better part of the consumer.
It's an
Am I
interesting
not wrong?
time we're
Am I
in,
wrong?
and
Am I
no,
wrong?
you're not
Yeah.
wrong. It's an interesting time to be a video game player. They have, all these huge games and huge projects, but everyone keeps going back to the old stuff because it's more realistic and it's more down to earth.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm gonna push back. It is an interesting time to be a video game nerd, right? But it's yeah. At the same time, if you want to continue to position yourself in the enjoyment of like modern games and the modern systems to play, I think there's developers and Rockstar is notorious for this because they actually brought this up with GTA 6, with the about ready to make its very
Debut.
timely release. Um, very timely, everybody. Um, I think they're trying to push back on this concept because they would be this system of copy left would effectively in the online community and the online gaming community specifically would make them irrelevant. So like Rockstar, one of the lead developers of GTA 6 with Rockstar, yeah, within like the last year, admitted that we need to force people to pay per hour to play GTA 6 online.
I saw that too. It's I mean, it is a very popular series. I'm not going to
It
deny
is.
that, but I mean that is a very significant pressure test.
Well, yeah,
You
and with
can't.
that pressure test, what do you think would happen with the open source community on getting a hold of that? Because it's actually very difficult to be able to adopt and manipulate Rockstar games unless they pretty much give you that atmosphere, say with the PC version of the game. Do you
Yeah,
think that Rockstar will make it even harder by not release? I don't know. Are they releasing GTA 6 to PC? I don't think they are
I
because of this
I'm sure they
concept.
are.
I mean, it's very popular, especially on PC, and it's easier to mod for the online,
Yeah.
which and that's how you get like the RP, the role playing lobbies, because that is one of uh the one of the most favorite pastimes in the Rockstar community is the Red Dead Redemption and the GTA Online RP lobbies, where they pretty much mod out the the lobby maps and make them desolate and empty for the most part. You keep a few NPCs, but then you can fill up the rest with characters that are of actual players with their characters, and then they can role play.
Right.
But how do you think this would affect this copy left scenario with such like what Rockstar wants to do with forcing
Well,
people to pay hourly if they get their way?
Rock Rockstar, they've went after the people that are trying to, uh, de- uh, deprogram, not decompile their copies of Grand Theft Auto Vice City and open source it because the way that the team behind the decompilation project went about it, there's two different ways. Now, um, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the exact framework as how it works, but I'm not. To be honest, I'm drawing a little bit of a blank right now. But there's a legal way where you're doing it software wise, and then there's basically a quick and dirty way to do it, and it's just the way that they try to decompile. What they did was they tried to decompile an Android version of Grand Theft Auto 6, and not 6, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and they
Vice
did the quick
City,
and
yeah.
dirty way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and San Andreas. San Andreas also
yeah,
was an Android, a mobile version,
yeah.
which was
And Grand Theft
terrible
Auto
from what
3.
I hear. Yeah.
But you have to know what you're doing if you're doing something like that, because if you don't, you can get in a lot of hot water.
This is fascinating stuff, honestly. More fascinating than the politics of the day. And I'm glad that we did this, but we have gone beyond the 30-minute mark. And since we have no videos or articles of today, we don't want to bore you too much with two nerds talking about video games and and the aspect of copyright, copyleft, and open source and coding. And it, most of y'all don't like that, or maybe you do. I don't know. But
Coding is an interesting subject. It's
it
part
is
of
a very
engineering.
interesting, yeah, and it's a part of life, honestly, especially because you can mesh it in so many different avenues, whether it's with video game design or with different computer software, antivirus software, um, engineering. I mean, in any capacity, architecture, um, or the blockchain. That just perked people up right there. Eyebrow raised right there. The blockchain. So, but with that, I think we should probably go ahead and cut off here for this Tuesday edition of Legacy News. Uh, unless you have something else to say, Andrew. You're the
No,
host.
I'll see if I can find another copy or a better explanation, and I'll send it to you about the different versions of decompiling software, and you could probably put it in the comments or something like that. I'll post it on X. But it's pretty fun
Fascinating.
just learning about all this stuff.
It is, man. It is. It is. And but with that, go down and follow at retard_news for all your retarded news all across the scope. And go ahead and join the conversation. Like, subscribe, and join the conversation. Drop a comment over on YouTube, X, or wherever you find the Legacy Right. And let's get this moving forward. With that,
Thanks for watching.
anything else? Oh wait, there we go. That works.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's Andrew Joseph, by the way. I am
Oh,
Zachary Kaiser, the legacy of Jennifer Ed Kaiser, and I hope you enjoyed this one.
sorry, I was too busy going on Twitter. Retard news.
Retard news is where it's at. So join, man. There's a community. So follow Retard News, and then he can get you set up into the community that you can join. Let's expand the world with Retard News. We're taking over, man. We are the media. We are the real media. Let the legacy media die. It's all about the next generation of Retard News.